Welcome to the Cabincast, your Getaway Primer.
The Cabincast is brought to you by Roughing It in Style. Roughing It in Style's family business was created to supply folks like you with unique furnishings that fit homes where memories are made. And like these memories, their handmade furniture and decor is made to last. They emphasize creative innovation in interior design, cabinet design, and custom furniture. Their designers are available to help you create spaces that are warm, inviting, and fit your unique style. There are 2 locations, one in the Northwoods of Wisconsin, in Harshaw, 10 miles south of Minocqua, and one out west in Fort Collins, Colorado. Find out more today at roughingItinstyle.com.
This week's guest really dives deep into memories of family road trips. And that got me thinking. I loved family road trips growing up. I was the oldest of 4 kids, and I actually grew up in Texas. And our big trip every couple times a year, spring break, summer, we would drive to Colorado. So we had like a 10 to 15 hour trip that we would pile in the old Suburban. And I think one of my favorite parts of it was I was the kid that liked to make my spot in the car. I loved to have my book right here and my notebook right here and my cassette player with my headphones. Remember back, maybe you were too young, Erik.
Nope.
I don't know. You might have been CDs, but I had cassette players. Yeah. And I would love to have my little spot that I could, do all my favorite things for all that time and looking out the window. And my siblings would be all around. And I was even back in the day when you didn't always have to have a seatbelt on, So I had a brother that was constantly wanting to stand up in the car. It's crazy to even think about that now with our own kids because they're so strapped in. But I loved stopping places too. We always would stop. I'm a big tradition person. I love to stop at the same places, my favorite restaurants, the same hotel overnight. I can't wait to do those things. And we always would stop on our way to Colorado at this Mexican place for... Do you like Mexican food, Erik?
Oh, absolutely. My favorite.
Yeah, I love Mexican food. And we would stop at La Ploma Blanca. I think it means white dove. And call in and correct me if I'm wrong. But I love to stop there. And the best part were sopapillas. Oh my gosh,
I don't know
honey.
what that is.
It's like a dessert. So it's like a fried tortilla. And it's like a beignet, if you've ever had a beignet, like in New Orleans. And Autumn's over there nodding her head like, give me a sopapilla. And you would dip it in honey. Oh my gosh, it was the best thing. But you would only typically eat them on the road trip, so it made it special.
Yep.
We'd stop and get donuts when we left town, and then it was to stop it there to eat. And when I was a teenager, one of the things, did your parents ever embarrass you, Erik, when you were a teenager?
Never once. There was nothing to embarrass me on. I was perfect.
You were perfect?
A perfect teenager.
Do you know what my mom would do? She would bring in Trivial Pursuit cards to the restaurant because she was like, let's keep the kids active, and she would ask us questions and try to play these family games. And I would just be like, oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing. But looking back, it was so wonderful. And I loved every minute of all those little silly things that they would try to do. And the other thing I remember is that we listened to George Strait. You like George Strait?
Actually, I went to the Cowboy Rides Away George Strait concert.
Did you?
In Vegas with my brother-in-law. It's his favorite, one of his favorite guys.
That is so awesome.
Yeah, so it was a good concert.
Yeah, and that's what we would listen to the whole way to Colorado and the whole way back. And we would sing all together, all the songs. It was just great. Did you guys sing in the car on your road trips?
You know what? I think we were more the type of, my brother and I would elbow my sister when she would start singing. And my sister actually has a beautiful singing voice. And I think we were the 2 jerks that ruined it by like, stop singing. No one wants to hear you sing. So
remind me how the order, like there's you.
So I'm the oldest, and then I have a sister who is, I think she's like 2 years younger than me. And then my brother's 4 years younger than me. So,
and I'm the oldest too. Wow. We have 2, we're both oldest.
Yeah.
This will be interesting. So yeah, I'm the oldest of 4 and my youngest, then I have a sister 2 years younger, then a brother, and then another brother who's 9 years younger. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So there's a pretty good stretch there. Yeah.
Right.
We were really close together. So
yeah,
yeah, we were all in high school at the same time.
which makes it interesting too when you're on the road trip. But yeah.
Yeah.
Did you guys play family games, or what did you do on your road trips?
You know what we did? Some of the games that a lot of times my parents, we used to go up to northern Michigan, up in the UP, to a place called, at the time, Stewart's Way Dam Resort on the Michigamme Reservoir. It was this beautiful, sprawling reservoir. They still have a resort there, and we actually went up there, I think 2 years ago. And my grandparents used to live up there, and everything looks exactly the same as it was when I was growing up. I don't think they've fixed they haven't tightened a screw.
And are you so glad?
Oh, it was like
'Cause you're like,
going back in time. It was unbelievable. And they still had the same, same greasy burgers. And
Yeah.
I mean, it was gorgeous. We went for a pontoon ride. But our road trips up there, my parents also had a Suburban and definitely didn't wear seat belts at the time. So the Suburban, when the seats would fold flat,
Right?
and they would just it would be myself, my sister, my brother, and one of whatever dog we had at the time would all be sleeping back there, and they would drive all night so that it was, an easier drive for us. And they'd always pull a trailer full of all our stuff because at, some point when the cars filled up with people.
Right. Yeah. You take up all the room.
Yeah. So a lot of times they'd be nighttime road trips. And then one of the most memorable road trips, we rented a motorhome and drove from, at the time, I think that would be northern Illinois, where we lived, down to Disney World and stayed at one of the RV parks down in Disney World. And that was memorable too, because we're like, oh my gosh, we're cooking lunch
Right.
while we're driving down the road.
That would be great
And,
memories.
So, kids nowadays,
Yeah.
you're missing out with all your seat belts and your fancy buckles, but
Right.
there's a lot of good times to
And
be
your
had.
iPhones and
Yeah.
your whatever
Your
else that you're not
safety.
looking. Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't have fold down DVD players and all the things. So, definitely in our music that we listened to a lot was a lot of Beach Boys, or that whatever oldies radio station was playing at the time.
Whatever one you got in you could get the
Get the dial.
Yeah, get it in the right place. Yeah, we would road trip to my grandma and grandpa's house too, and it was only like a 2-hour drive, but on the weekends those were so much fun too. And one of the games we loved to play was we had certain things along the way we'd look for, and whoever saw it first
Sure.
would get the point. So I know when we used to drive up to the Northwoods to Minocqua, when it was a vacation spot for us, our kids would do the same thing. There used to be a barn just south of here that had a pig. It looked like a pig. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
The pig barn. That was like one of their things. And all these little things along the way. So, I mean, I'd love to hear what our listeners love to look for too, if they're coming up from Minocqua or on their road trips, what their road trip games are. It'd be fun to hear.
Yeah, I'd love to do. We used to do, of course, the license plate game where
Yeah.
we'd see how many states, and especially on long road trips, see how many states you could check off, kind of license plate bingo.
Right.
It was always fun.
We've actually done that just in the summer here in Minocqua, and we found almost all of them. It's like if you go to the zoo here in Minocqua, you can find almost all the states in one day. It's like they're everywhere. But yeah, road trips, they're such a great way to make memories with your family, and it's fun to hear how that played into Catherine's
Oh yeah, that's like
life.
Her,
Yeah.
formative for
Right.
her. I mean, absolutely. And you'll probably hear a couple of our memories in that discussion
Yeah.
too. But yeah, a lot of fun. And actually we love road trips so much. We kind of wanted to create something fun for listeners. So we created a Spotify playlist. So if you search for the Cabincast in Spotify, and we'll put a link in the show notes too if you're in Spotify. But we created a road trip for some music. So if you have Spotify, listen to that. We'll keep adding all kinds of tunes that make the time fly a little bit on your way to your getaway. So check that out.
Yeah, it's a great playlist.
Yeah. And I actually kind of go through and found a really kind of cabins in the news, I guess might be a new.
Really? How cool is that?
Something new. So this is something that I found from, the headline is Westfield Historical Society Fights to Preserve Log Cabin. So this is out of Westfield, Indiana. And kind of the gist of the story, I won't read the whole article, is the Historical Society of Westfield, Washington, the museum is working to preserve a log cabin that's nearly 200 years old. Historians believe the log cabin was built in 1833, before Westfield, Indiana was even a town. There's no way to be sure, but they believe a trap door inside the cabin points to the possibility of it being part of the Underground Railroad.
Wow.
So that's, might be conjecture, but it sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
I guess developers bought the land the cabin sits on, and the society says they were going to tear the cabin down, so the society got involved. This is a quote from Diana Payton, president of the Historical Society. I immediately called the developer and just stood in front of the wrecking ball. I mean, this was getting ready to be torn down right away. She says Langston Development was happy to give the log cabin to the Historical Society. The next step is to take down the cabin and preserve it. Once the weather improves, the society will put it back up for the community to enjoy.
Wow, what a great story.
Yeah. So it's just fun to hear about cabins and getaways and stories in the news. So we'll maybe keep track of that, and hopefully we can get some pictures posted. We'll link to the story from Fox 59 in our show notes as well, so people can check that out.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
So, hi, Katherine. How are you?
I am so good. How are you?
Good. We are talking today with our friend Katherine, and Katherine is the founder of Lake Effect Co. Lake Effect Co. is a brand and blog that encourages you to connect with the beauty and adventure of nature through time by the water. It's a venue to share magnetic lake stories and perfect lake moments, to embrace a unique lifestyle and to let the ever-changing water inspire us. She's also the host of the All Tides podcast, which she created as a way to continue to serve folks with her words and stories and the words and stories of her guests. It's about how living with the water and nature impacts life, inspires her, and allows her to thrive in whatever situation she finds herself in. Pretty cool. Is it fun to hear that about yourself? Like somebody else reading your words?
Whoa, did I write that?
I know. It's pretty cool. Katherine, I just was reflecting when I was driving to our studio here today about the first time I met you. And can you remember that it was up in Manitowish Waters?
Yeah,
in the Northwoods. Yeah, at one of your pop-up
Yeah.
shops. Instantly clicked and had a lot in common. So it's just fun to keep watching all the things you're doing and to get to talk to you today.
Yeah,
So-
and we here at Roughing It, I was talking to my wife Sam and said, "Have you seen this company?" And Sam does a lot of the sourcing for products. I said, "You need to get in touch with this Katherine and see if we can carry the line." So we've actually picked up the Lake Effect line here, and our customers just absolutely love it. That's been really fun to see the apparel take off so much. It fits the Northwoods feel so fantastically.
I am so appreciative of both of you. And yeah, Kristin, I feel like I bump into you I miss the Northerly Collective girls, but when they were doing events, anytime they had anything, I said, "Oh, I wonder if Kristin will be there." And then, someone on my team was passing through Minocqua like a week or so ago, and they sent me a picture, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even know we were in here. This is so awesome." So
It is good. It's so popular up here. You have a tie yourself to northern Wisconsin. Can you give us a little bit of your background, where you grew up?
Yeah, so I'm from Heartland, Wisconsin, which is in what we call the Lake Country area, and I feel like there's probably a lot of parts of a lot of states that have lake country, but I've always grown up very close to the water. But my family purchased a cottage in Three Lakes, so less than an hour from you, near the river, on the chain when I was just about 3. And that is the space that I consider to be the lake, or like my lake that really brewed my lake love. I've been kind of obsessed with summer especially, but any time there since I can remember, it was just magical and just a true disconnect from anything. And I think, part of it was the undivided attention from my parents that I was able to enjoy, but also just, there was something so magical about it that I picked up on right away and only grew stronger with time. So I'm 33, so we've had it 30 years now, and I can't imagine what life would look like if my dad hadn't made the crazy decision. Some of his advisors at the time were like, "This is ridiculous. Like you can't afford this. You don't want this." But he knew it, he felt the magic there too. And so he went for it, and probably one of the best decisions he's made.
So this is something that was incredibly formative to your life. You built a company around lake effect, but it's so awesome to hear how special your folks either having a lake home or visiting a lake home on a regular basis, just getting in touch with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, part of when I sat down to write a blog post right when I was launching Lake Effect, which will actually be 3 years in December, which is wild. But yeah, crazy. I had my family, all 4 of us, we just have one older sister. So the 4 of us each wrote what the cottage meant to us and kind of summarized what time there inspired and did for each of us. And it was so funny because we all said the exact same thing, but in a really different way. And it was a part of that was truly just this living presently, because, well, one, we're 4 hours away in our other life. So you really feel a very strong disconnect. No one can reach you. Even if there's a problem, it's like, sorry, we're gone.
Right. Yeah.
So that escape was definitely part of it. But, everywhere we looked, there was something to explore, something beautiful, something to just be present for and not be rushing on from one thing to the next. And I think that was what really, that's still to this day, like that same like present living and just letting nature guide you from one thing to the next, as well as just like all the traditions of there are the same things that we look for if we're going to go on a vacation. How can we kind of mirror this in a tropical place?
Right.
But yeah, it's been everything to our family.
You mentioned something that really caught my ear when you said the undivided attention of your parents. Mm-hmm. I've never really thought about it that way. How when you bring a family up there, gets in the way. And if you have siblings or they're running to soccer practice, they're going all over. And it really just, you do get the undivided attention of parents, even if it's as a group, as a small family. Can you talk a little bit about that and how special that was? How did that create a feeling of attention and undivided for you?
Yeah, totally. So my dad had a business. He had started it, I want to say probably less than 10 years before my sister was born. And so he was very much in startup stages, in the thick of it, and it wasn't always smooth sailing. So our normal at-home life was very much, my mom always joked we didn't have a bedtime, because if my dad wasn't going to be home till quite late, like we would stay up so we could at least spend a little time with him. So we didn't have like normal like bedtime or dinner hours. Like we just kind of hung out so that we could get a little time. But so when he was home, he was very much as present as he could be, but ultimately his aim was to be focused on the business and growing that. And so my normal life was a lot based around, we all kind of existed and did our own thing. Our job was to do school. Their job was to provide and do what they need to do. And it wasn't as cold as I'm probably making it sound right now, but it seemed like we all kind of existed just kind of doing our duty and fulfilling what we were here to do in that role. But when we went up north, it was a completely different game. First of all, the drive alone, the 4-hour drive. Most people, I remember, like friends, hated road trips and driving, and I loved it because that was just kind of like the kickstart, the gateway to what was about to happen, and we just had so much fun talking and catching up. And then once we were up there, we have a very small cottage. A lot of people say they have a cottage or a cabin, and they're downplaying the beautiful situation they've got going on. But we have like a true old school tiny little thing that's been like added onto 14 times, and it's funny. But you can't really escape anybody there. So even if there was an issue going on, you were forced to reconcile it on the spot. And because of that, close proximity, it's like if someone's playing a game, everyone's going to play the game. And I even think of things like learning to ski or really anything outside. I mean, my dad's a hunter, so if he wanted to have a target practice with him, that was one-on-one attention. So between like all the different activities we'd learn, it was very focused on one kid at a time, truly like having those conversations that are easy to pass by in normal everyday life and the normal grind. So it really always became like a true escape in that way. And even when we were older, like going through school, high school and college, there were so many times where it was like, let's just all go up there, even though we're all like adults, no other friends, no other cousins or kids are coming, just the four of us to kind of refocus on that glue and really get that attention to what each of us needed. So
that's so
pretty
great.
Cool. It's a pretty cool spot for us. Yeah.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
Talk about, you were talking about the drive up and how it was that kickstart, that gateway to this great time together as a family. I saw on your blog too, you talked about how you felt the night before you would take off. You knew you were going up north. Some people say that Disneyland feel.
Yes.
Share a little bit about
absolutely.
those feelings and about your road trips up.
Absolutely. So I remember, especially, again, winter was not as intense of a butterfly feeling, but in the summer it was just this. Well, I should also clarify, we don't live on any water back in the lake country area where, as the crow flies, probably like a quarter of a mile from a lake, but we don't have access. And so it's easy for me to feel very landlocked. And I'm also one of those people who is just always hot in the summer, and being back and not at the cottage during the warm temps, especially as a kid, was just so frustrating for me. So it felt like summer really got to happen the minute we would hop in the car and head north. And so the road trips were always, it's like this mad scramble. What are we packing? Do we have enough stuff? And my mom always had one of those massive Suburbans, like back in the day, that just like looked like they could go on forever. And we would have that thing packed full, the dog or two in there, and just probably looked like chaos, but it was just like the happiest chaos. And even just the packing, who cares? Do you have a swimsuit? Do you have a towel? Great, you're covered. That's really all you need.
Quick question on Suburban. So we had the same thing when we used to go up to our kind of Northwoods getaway when we were kids. Did your parents fold all the seats flat and let you guys all hang out, or did you actually have to sit in the seats?
Oh, we actually had to sit
Oh, you had to sit with the seat belts and everything?
I'm way older than you guys. We didn't have to do seat belts. We could just roll around, stand up, anything. Back in my day.
Yeah, we did the night drive with the sleeping bags and the seats folded flat, which you just never get away with. I mean, that wasn't that long ago. I'm, not 100, but I can picture it now, and you just never get away with that now. But the Suburban thing really strikes home for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can just picture how, as you're talking, Katherine, about just seeing your family scrambling to get in there and get going. It's just, oh yeah. It's a great visual. Yep. Did you guys just talk? Did you listen to music on the way? Did you play certain games? What did you do on your road trip up?
A lot of music. My poor dad had to listen to every musical phase that we had, all the boy bands and Hanson and all that. So we definitely tortured him. But otherwise, my parents have really awesome music tastes that I can now appreciate a ton. And we listen to a ton of Beatles, and I know more about the Beatles than the average human probably would ever think they want to know. And that if you were to quiz me on something, I'm sure I'd forget all of it right now. But
that's awesome, though.
We would sing Windows Down. We love quite a few different plays that we'd see, and then we just know the soundtrack, or even the movies. To this day, we all still know every Disney song, and that was mostly from, we didn't even watch that many movies, but it was mostly from listening to the soundtrack in the car on those car rides. But we also had a lot of memorization games, I'm going on a trip to the cottage and I'm going to bring an apple. And then, you go through the alphabet and everyone has to remember what they're all bringing. So we would play a lot of memory games like that. My mom was a teacher, so she knew a lot of those really fun games to keep us distracted. But otherwise, I just I can remember that drive is basically programmed into my body at this point. So when I drive, I kind of get in the car and I just end up at the cottage and I'm well, what just happened for 4 hours? But it's so programmed. But you remember exactly when to look to the left because there's going to be an epic cornfield during this month, or depending on the time of the day, you'll see this. So I love the drive, and there are definitely parts of that drive that are just very boring, but I find them fascinating and beautiful because I've been watching it for 30 years.
Right.
So fun.
When you're talking about your parents, I think I met your parents at the pop-up too. I think they were there helping you, giving you all the attention, right?
Yeah.
But
Bless their souls.
Right?
They're on they go to every pop-up and that's so supported.
So tell us a little bit about starting Lake Effect and when the pop-up started happening and to where you are now.
So I started I got into it in kind of a roundabout way, but I had started a career actually working with Google, and I had been doing like customer support for a couple years and then community management for a couple years. But my degree was in marketing, and I just love branding, and I have always had an eye for just like putting together beautiful aesthetics. And so that was kind of my thing. I'm not using anything. I'm not really doing anything that feels great. I left. At that point, I was living in San Francisco, and I moved home to the Midwest because I was like, if I'm going to start a business, I want to be surrounded by people who care about me already because they have to, because they're my family.
Right.
So I'm going to move home, get the support I need. And then I started freelance marketing, where I was able to kind of get a sense of what business is needed from a marketing standpoint and just really learn like what small business is about. I obviously had like a fair amount of background in that from watching my dad over the years, but I wanted something a little bit more tailored to potentially what I might go into. His business was court reporting, so it was not something that I really thought I'd be heading into.
Right.
And then I really realized with all of my clients, the common theme was none of them were really focused on like greater impact other than, their sales or my passion for storytelling and branding and making people feel something was not being put to use. And so I kind of went down this interesting road personally in terms of mindset, like what's my purpose? Like, why am I even on earth? What should I be doing? And I found myself always, and at this point I was living in Milwaukee, and I was always just like walking along Michigan, just kind of any and all weather, and it can be pretty brutal. But I would just be down there taking it in, and then I thought, okay, what's the other constant in my life? And it's like, going up north for like my therapy is what I called it. Or if I was at home by my parents, then it was like paddleboarding on an inland lake, or so it's just kind of like I'm always by the water. So it just made sense to me that this water is healing me. And the other thing I noticed was mostly when I was down by Lake Michigan, just the water quality was not great at all, depending on the day. And so I just started to kind of put it together. Like I could put something in motion that both takes care of this water that I rely on so greatly for recreation, joy, healing, as well as like allows me to put together my storytelling and a beautiful aesthetic. So it really started what I thought would be more of like a blog where people could share their stories, because that was the one thing where it's like, and you guys know, it's like you get someone talking about their lake or their cottage, and it's like, they're not, do you have an hour? Because they're going to go on, and they're passionate and happy. And that's a lot of people, their truest version of themselves, I feel like. And so that's kind of how I started, was just like, okay, I'm going to just do this. I had come up with a name, and then I was like, all right, I just kind of opened the door for more and more sayings and phrases to come through. They just couldn't stop. So I started telling them to people, and they were like, yeah, you should put that on a shirt. Yeah, I'd wear that. So I was like, okay, I guess we're doing retail right out the gate. So it just very quickly turned into what it is now in terms of like the retail offering. And then, so it was online only, but I very quickly realized, for awareness, it's great to do these little pop-ups. So I've been doing anywhere from 5 to 10 a year for the last couple years. And yeah, my parents would help me pack everything up. Like at that point, the inventory was either like in my apartment or at their house. So they were roped into a lot of it.
That's awesome.
And major props to them. Most parents, I'm guessing, would be like, can you just get this out of here? And maybe this is when you hire an intern. Or I'm like, no, that's you.
They probably liked watching you chase your dream, though. I think they're probably pretty proud of it.
Yeah, I think so. And, maybe even like my dad feels a little guilty for giving me the entrepreneurial bug. So he's like,
yeah, he's obligated. Yeah. So,
yeah. So then you could see it in their eyes when they would like make the connection between like the clothing and what they were experiencing. And it was just like this perfectly compelling experience. But there's a big piece that I like going back to like the healing and the mindset stuff that the lake was giving me. That really has now become a pretty solid part of the foundation of the business, is like recognizing all that water does for us in terms of our mental health and the science behind that, and not just the novelty of it. And so it's been really helpful in terms of helping people realize, okay, this is helping you on like a physiological level. So now we have to like step up and take care of our natural resources. It's really helping me to drive that point home, and which then makes me feel like I'm even further like doing my purpose.
and you give a percentage back too of things that you sell toward, is it Flow, or what is the organization that you give some money back to?
The organization I've changed a couple times, like once per year, switching it up, but I started with the Alliance for the Great Lakes. Last year was the Surfrider Foundation based out of Milwaukee, and this year it's the organization Flow for Love of Water. And they're based in Traverse City and are doing a lot of really important work to help protect on like urgent stuff, not just like the usual, like we need to up our responsible living, but you know, there's a pipeline of oil going through the Great Lakes. We should probably figure out what's happening there. So some of the mission critical things, we are on top of it.
That's great.
Yeah.
So one of the phrases that you use a lot in your marketing, and it's on one of the favorite shirts that people just love around here, is chase more sunsets. You know, normally when you talk about a sunset, it's like the end of something instead of a beginning, and people use it in a little bit different way in kind of modern vernacular. Can you talk about what chase more sunsets means to you, and why do you think it affects people in such a positive way when they see a saying like that on a shirt? Why do you think that strikes people so much?
I think a couple reasons. For a lot of people, I think it's kind of this, everyone has this memory, or maybe multiple memories of that one epic sunset they saw that one time, or has kind of like this romanticized memory of something related to it. So I think a lot of times it just very quickly spurs like something, or they just have like a ritual built around. They always enjoy a cocktail overlooking on their pier, on their deck, where they feel that feeling. So that's one reason for me. And what I've really tried to share with people is, for me, Chase More Sunsets is this like concept that it's important to find something that we find beautiful and make it a regular part of our everyday life. There is beauty accessible to us daily if we take the time to find it and make it in like a part of our routine. Going back to kind of like the mindset work, like I feel like we live in such a state of obligation, and going to work and coming home and cooking, being very strict and formal with just how we live, unless it's the weekend or we're on vacation. And that sucks to me. Like, that's just not how we should be living. What are these things that we can do every day that inspire us, that make us feel good, for some sort of memory of a really good feeling or a really good time, and then make it a part of your everyday life? So I think people can kind of get a sense of what that means for them, or if it just means they're thinking of that place that they go to, then that's beautiful too.
Yeah, that's great. So, Katherine, a question we're asking all of our guests is, what does your best day at the cabin on the lake look like?
Oh, yes. Well, hopefully I went to bed early the night before because I feel like our cabin is a black hole for sleep. So I like mornings. So I hope I went to bed early, but I love sneaking out of the cabin before anyone's awake and catching sunrise from the paddleboard. So I love to just like be out on the water on like hopefully a balmy day. And I have a couple spots where I know I can zip over to and really watch it come up over the trees. So thank goodness for really tall pines. So you get a little bit more sleep in time there. So you can do that. And then I'll either like go for a dip there, or once I get back to the pier, leave my paddle, do a little dip, and then I'll see what the fam's up to. We usually go for like a family walk and before we have breakfast. So I'd love to get in on that, and then just kind of take the morning, like having coffee, reading, super slow paced, maybe go down to the water, maybe just sit on our deck. We have an awesome deck with views of 2 different lakes, and it's basically heaven. So I would love to just be sitting there. And then the sun doesn't hit our pier until right around noon in the summer, which I used to hate, but now I love, because that means I spend a little time if I want to do something productive or like responsible in any sort of way, which, you know, as a business owner is most days.
Right.
And then it's going to be sunny and 80 without a cloud in the sky. So we're going to pack up the coolers and we're going to go on a really long booze cruise all over the chain, go to some of our favorite little spots, just kind of check out the wildlife, maybe stop by the Pine Isle for a cocktail on the way home. And then I love to send my dad upstairs to work on dinner while the rest of us jump in and out of the water for like another hour, and then head on up, enjoy sunset from the deck. And then we're going to definitely start a campfire. And because it's also a cloudless sky, the stars are going to be epic. So we'll catch some shooting stars, enjoy the quiet, and then go to sleep listening to the loon calls. What do you think?
I think it sounds perfect.
Yeah, that sounds like a wonderful thing.
I'm like, what month is it and how far away is that?
Yeah.
We're just sitting here like dreaming of that moment too right now. So if we're a little quiet, it's because we're picturing it. Yes, that's perfect.
Okay, good. You get me.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us at the Cabincast here. If people want to find out a little bit more about you, check out your products and read more about your story, I know they can check out the All Tides podcast, but where else can they find you?
Yeah, lakeeffectco.com. And then obviously they can shop the products at this shop I know somewhere in your area.
Yeah, I think it's called Roughing It in Style.
Yeah, that might be the one. But yeah, lakeeffectco.com, and then that's where you can find the social media for the site. And then, All Tides Podcast will take you to all the content there, and I think you should be good to go.
Well, we'll link everything in our show notes so that everybody can click right over to find out more. But it's been so much fun to talk to you. I love any time that we get a chance to connect. So thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
My pleasure. And I'm going to need to get there sometime in the very near future. It's been like over a month and my heart's aching a little. So I'll try to come up that way soon, and we can get together and I can check out your awesome recording studio.
Yeah, that would be great.
Cool. Thank you so much, Katherine.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Cabincast. You can find details and more information in the show notes on our website at www.thecabincast.com. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen so you won't miss a single episode. Follow us on your favorite social media channels. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The Cabincast. We'd also love to hear from you. We want to hear your getaway and cabin stories. For a chance to have your story featured on an upcoming episode, email us at getaway@thecabincast.com. Until next week, enjoy the journey.